What's cooking, good lookins? You're listening and watching Nerd Girl Talk with SJ. I am your host, SJ, and we're back with our favorite guest, Rabbi Stuart Federow. Welcome back. And we're on a new year. Can you believe we're already at it? We're coming up to a whole year.
I know. It's unbelievable. Time just goes so fast.
It really does.
Yep.
Thank you once again for coming on.
Always.
Thank you. Just FYI, I'll put all the links in the description box below, but don't forget, Rabbi Stuart Federow wrote a really incredible book, Judaism and Christianity, A Contrast, available in now Spanish and Portuguese if you want. Look at that. I love it.
Yay.
You can also catch him, I forget what station it is.
AM 1070, The Answer in Houston, Texas. It's
That's right.
am1070.org. I'm sorry, am1070.com.
For a show of faith, which features the rabbi, and it sounds like a joke. Everyone's heard a priest and who else? Or is it
a Baptist minister, Roman Catholic priest, and me?
Right.
Yes.
But you've had like other faith leaders on before, right?
Oh, Baptist. Besides the Baptist and Catholic, we've had Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Hare Krishna, but we haven't had guests of other religions on in a long time. So
Gotcha.
Basically, it's just minister, priest, and rabbi.
Right.
Yes.
But check that show out. It's a good listen to. I know my folks still enjoy listening to you.
Thank you.
And we're coming up on Yom Limmud, which for non-Jewish people means a day of learning. And as we know, the rabbi teaches how to read Hebrew in 3 hours. 1 hour. See, I give myself like a little bit more time.
Right. Yes. Well, no, Rachel, you're correct. It used to be a 3-hour class, but I realized that the first hour was just simply repeated in the second hour, and the third hour we were taking out the Book of Esther and reading it in the original out loud.
There you go.
Okay, so if it was the same thing, just done the second hour that we did the first hour. Right. All we need is the first hour, and if they need to, they can watch it 1,000,000 times a month. So,
there you go.
Yep.
But now there are workbooks coming out. So
yes. If you go to HebrewJumpstart.com, you can download handouts that I used to hand out for every time I taught it that include 6 pages that can be made by you after you download it by photocopying 6 pages onto hard cardstock and cutting it out and making your own flashcards. And all that's free. But I'm coming out with a workbook that people will be able to use to practice reading out loud, and also access to a video of me reading every word on the page so they can correct themselves, make sure they're reading it correctly.
That's wonderful. I like that added bonus, because sometimes you just repeat things over and over. You get it like muddled in your head, but now if you can actually see it and handle it, that's just another...
If you practice it incorrectly, you'll learn it incorrectly. So this will help them do that. So
that's excellent. I love that. It
should be only about $10 a booklet.
Oh, okay, that's nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. So we are here today. Oh my God, I don't know why I said it like that, but we're coming up on Passover. We're recording this a little bit early, so hello in the future or from the past. However time travel works. I hate time travel stories. Watch this. Right. Passover's coming up, and so I thought we would talk about it for a little bit.
Absolutely.
A little brief history. Passover was not my favorite holiday growing up.
Why not?
I think because of all the changes we had to do.
Right.
Like we had to, the way I remember being like 5 and talking to my folks about it. And the way my dad explained it was like, well, do you want to like give up like waffles and cereal or something? or do you want to have toast with jam? Like supposedly that was the thing for Easter was toast and jam, and I don't know why that was like
Never had
terrible.
that, but right.
Like I
Well,
don't understand.
here's the thing. Okay, in the
Yeah.
Bible, in the Bible, in the Torah, in the five books of Moses, it
Mm-hmm.
explicitly says in a few places that God commanded the Jewish community that during the week of Passover, remember, it's only a week, it's not a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
So for a week out of every year, we don't eat leavening. What is leavening? Leavening is the like dough when it rises.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's the action of yeast feeding on the sugar found in the grains,
Right.
and it gives two uh, byproducts. One of them is alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's how you get bourbon and
Beer and
rum and all.
everything.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, but the other thing it produces, which is the important thing, is carbon dioxide.
Oh.
So carbon dioxide is what makes the dough billow up.
Right.
Okay, so for 1 week, 8 days actually out of the year,
Mm-hmm.
when sorry, when living outside the land of Israel, 8 days, the Bible only asks for 7, but back then they didn't know anything about time zones. Uh, and so outside the land of Israel, we celebrate it for 8 days. So for 8 days, we don't eat anything that has or even could possibly have leavening in it. And some people claim that it's the origin of spring cleaning, but the Jewish community, in order to make sure there is no leavening within your house, which is what it says in the Bible, that you're not supposed to own it or have it in your house, will clean up everything and make sure there's no crumbs or bread
Mm-hmm.
things left anywhere so that there's no leavening in the house. So, and that's the work. Once it's over, because Rachel,
Right.
I happen to agree with you. Once the house is clean, okay, and my parents, may they rest in peace, they always, it was a lot of work for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but once it was clean, once everything was done and Passover began, I used to like it. I used to
Right.
like the holiday. Yeah.
No,
So,
totally. I think that's the other thing that got me to end up liking the holiday is like, especially, I don't, it was also about the food, something about that whole, like, you just couldn't have, your normal food stuffs. We
right,
had to go,
because they might have leavening in it.
right. No, 100%.
Right.
But like, that was the whole thing. I think it was more, especially when I got older and I learned how to cook more and stuff,
Right.
then I was able to, I guess, get back a little bit of joy into it because it's like, oh, well, I'm
Right.
making these things now, so it's
Right.
okay and stuff.
Right. And
And
besides, you'd miss your leavening. When we were kids, we'd
right,
miss what was leavened. See,
or
people forget that yeast cells are naturally found in the air. Okay, if you leave out,
mm-hmm,
okay, take a bunch of fruit, cut them up into individual pieces, and cover
yeah,
them in water, and eventually it'll ferment. It'll because yeast cells
oh
are found in the
yeah,
air, and it's natural. And some people say
hmm.
that when the Jewish community would get rid of their leavening,
Mm-hmm,
okay, they would get rid of things like the starter for bread,
mm-hmm,
which already has the yeast in it.
yeah,
Okay, in other words, we're relying on God to provide the yeast again.
okay,
Yeah, that they claim that was one of the origins. I'm not sure if that's true.
maybe,
Right, but you, as a child, you probably felt deprived because you couldn't eat everything you wanted.
right, yeah.
Yeah,
Couldn't have pasta anymore. Couldn't go out to eat,
right,
especially.
right.
Um,
Yep,
couldn't have like school lunches or anything. If like teachers were passing out stuff, you couldn't
couldn't eat it.
have it.
Nope.
Right. So there
Right.
was
So
that,
it's an
definitely that.
exercise. It's an exercise in willpower.
It is that. It is that.
And remember, a child who knows to tell the teacher, "I'm sorry, I can't eat that. It's my holiday,"
Yeah.
also has the guts, the internal fortitude to say no to a drug pusher. "I'm sorry, I can't do that."
Oh,
Think about it. Think about it. If you learn how to say
that might
no to
explain a lot.
well, if you know how to say no to yourself,
Right.
if you have the willpower, the discipline, then
Mm-hmm.
you'll succeed in a lot more things in life as a result.
That's interesting. I never
Well,
thought of it that way.
religion has effects on people, benefits that people obtain from practicing religion that
Hmm.
most people don't even realize.
That's cool. I like
Yeah,
that.
Yep.
So let's get into. We'll see how brief we can make this history because there's a lot of history involved
Well,
for
yeah,
Passover.
there is. Okay. The history is quite simple. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In the Bible, as I said, God commands the Jewish people to eat only uh, unleavened things.
Right.
Okay. And the ritual that we're supposed to perform on Passover
Mm-hmm.
is Exodus chapter 12, verse 8.
Mm-hmm.
Exodus chapter 12, verse 8. And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roasted with fire. That means the Passover lamb,
Mm-hmm.
with unleavened bread and with bitter herbs shall they eat it. So the basic, up until the temple fell in the year 70, and you had a temple that you could go to,
Mm-hmm.
that's the temple originally built by Solomon, destroyed by the Babylonians, rebuilt under Cyrus of Persia with Ezra and Nehemiah. It's all in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you would go to the temple, you would get a lamb, okay, you would keep it, and then you would bring it to the temple to slaughter it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the origins of kosher slaughtering, by the way.
Oh,
And yeah, interesting. Okay, and then you
in
would
the
take.
temple?
Oh yeah, it was basically. This is a funny way to put it, but the priests became like the local butcher, and
Interesting.
most people really didn't have meat like we have meat in the United States.
Oh, okay.
You know, meat was a special thing, and so it was basically a part of a celebration. Okay,
Okay, yeah.
for feasting, you know, like a
Mm-hmm.
festival.
Right,
So
right.
the Bible commands three festivals
Mm-hmm.
for which you would go to Israel, you would go to the temple.
Mm-hmm.
That was Passover. Okay, it would be
Mm-hmm.
Shavuot, uh,
Right.
49 days later, 7 weeks later.
Mm-hmm.
And Shavuot is the Feast of Weeks because you're counting 7 weeks plus 1 day. 50th day becomes Shavuot.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and the third festival, pilgrimage festival, was Sukkot, the Feast of Booths, tabernacles.
Okay.
Okay, and you would go to the temple to celebrate. Part of the celebration was the feast, and you would have the priest in the temple slaughter the animal for you. You take the meat back, and that would be part of the festival meal.
Oh.
But for the Exodus, you're supposed to eat it with unleavened bread, not leavening, of course, and
Mm-hmm.
with bitter herbs. Once the temple
Right.
fell, okay, this is the history part. When the
Mm-hmm.
temple fell in 70, they basically invented a ritual called a Passover Seder, which means order, because you follow a certain order of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
They invented a Passover Seder to be done at home to replace the ceremony and the ritual that would have taken place at the temple because the temple got destroyed.
Okay.
Yes, which, by the way, is why Jesus' Last Supper could not have been a Passover Seder. Even if it might have been a Passover celebration, it wouldn't have been a Seder. So all the things we do at a Passover Seder, 90% of it, Jesus would have no idea what we were doing.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah, I was
Invented
gonna say,
later.
like, why wouldn't it have been? Because I've heard that too. It was probably a Seder. But that makes sense.
Yeah.
What
Couldn't
what
couldn't have been.
what maybe could have been a Seder, but back then wouldn't have been the same Seder now. Gotcha.
Well, it wouldn't have been a Seder at all. It would have
Oh.
been a Seder is a specific, like a Haggadah and everything. The
Mm-hmm.
Haggadah is the book that we go through
Right.
to tell the story of Passover through the use of foods as
Mm-hmm.
symbols. Okay, so Jesus wouldn't have known what corrosive was. He wouldn't have,
Mm.
which is like the mortar, the brick that they made into the store cities of Pithom and Ramses is what the Jewish slaves built,
Mm-hmm.
according to the Bible. Definitely not the pyramids, but they were cities that they built.
Mm-hmm.
And the brick they would use is exemplified. The mortar between the bricks was exemplified by this brown stuff called
Mm-hmm.
corrosive. Jesus would never have even known what that was.
Oh.
Yeah. Originally, the Seder was 1.5 pieces of matzah on the Seder plate. Now it's up to 3. Some families have 4. A 4th piece to remember those Jews living in lands where they're not allowed to
Okay.
celebrate Passover because they
Yeah.
have to basically keep their Judaism, hidden.
Right.
And uh, Jesus wouldn't have known most of what we do. He would have known the unleavened bread. He would have known the bitter herbs, and he would have thought you had to have an actual Passover lamb.
Oh,
So, but
literally
anyway,
the bare bones of it, the barest of bones.
exactly. And it wouldn't have been a Seder. It simply would have been the ritual Seder. I'm sorry. It wouldn't have been a Seder. It would have been simply the ritual where you
Mm-hmm.
eat lamb with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. That would be it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
that's cool.
Yep.
Uh,
So now we have this elaborate ceremony, the Seder,
and
as we
it's
were
pretty
talking about.
elaborate.
Well, it's an evening, and
It is.
it basically has three sections to it.
Mm-hmm.
The first section is really the telling of the story of the Passover,
Yes.
using the various foods as symbols for what happened, like the
Mm-hmm.
unleavened bread when they escaped from slavery.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have time to bake bread, so they put it on their backs and it baked in the sun, and it didn't have time to rise, didn't have time to leaven. So in remembrance of that, we eat the unleavened bread.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the charoset I already explained with the
Right.
representing the mortar and the bricks and all that stuff. The bitter herbs described in in Exodus 12:8 is the bitterness of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
So we use the symbols, the foods as symbols of the elements in the story of the Exodus from Egypt.
For those that don't know the actual story of Passover, can we do a
10-second
very,
one?
very short story
Okay.
just to help bring the symbols more
Right.
together in focus? Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So
Yeah.
quickly, you had Abraham,
Mm-hmm.
okay, who first person to believe in one God, indivisible and unique, okay, in God,
Mm-hmm.
and he had Isaac,
Mm-hmm.
okay. Isaac had Jacob.
Good.
Jacob had 12 sons.
Sons.
The 12 sons get very jealous of Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they sell him into slavery into Egypt. The famine happens in all in the world except Egypt because of Joseph has prepared for the famine and has food for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So Jacob and his 11 sons, because Joseph is already in Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
emigrate to Egypt for the food there. Okay. Eventually, Joseph reveals that he's now the second in command of all of Egypt, and he brings them in. He gives them land. Okay, they make friends with the Pharaoh, and they grow up there, and they become a nation in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They become very numerous. So, in the book of Exodus, we find out that a new Pharaoh comes to power in Egypt and doesn't know who Joseph was, doesn't know what Joseph did for the Egyptians or the world, really. And enslaves the Jews because they're not considered they're not real Egyptians.
Right.
They have dual loyalty, which is like one of the first indications of hatred of Jews, that we can't be trusted because we have dual loyalties. We're not good Americans. We're same thing.
Okay.
So they get enslaved and depends on how you want to read the time and how they did time back then, but they were enslaved for 200 plus years or 400 years, depending on how you want to read it.
Sure.
Okay, so God basically sends Moses to Pharaoh, asking Pharaoh to let my people go. Some people may know the, I think it's called the Negro Gospel or whatever, the 1950s. Go down Moses.
Oh, yeah.
Go down Moses to Egypt land. Tell Pharaoh, let my people go. Okay, that's the story we're telling. That's the story of the Exodus. So Pharaoh doesn't want to let his slaves go because then the Egyptians have to do the work. So God sends 10 plagues. Each plague is not against the Egyptians. Each plague is against the gods worshipped by the Egyptians. Okay. And after the 10th plague, Pharaoh says, get out of here. Just get away from me. I don't want you anymore. Okay, fine. And the entire Jewish community, plus non-Jews who joined the Jews, the Egyptians who joined the Jews, leave Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
and they flee and they get to the Sea of Reeds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, most people call it the Red Sea, but it's actually Yam Suf, which is Sea of Reeds, not red.
Gotcha.
And you have the whole, the Pharaoh changes his mind, wants to bring the Jews back, sends his chariots out to go get them, and
Mm-hmm.
the Egyptians are drowned in the sea. So, and then the Jews keep wandering for 40 years and eventually take over Canaan, the promised land,
Mm-hmm.
and then their history continues. But that's the story of the Exodus in a nutshell.
That actually was a pretty brief history. I like that.
Yeah, taking you all the way through the book of Genesis
There
into
you
the book of
go.
Exodus, right?
There you
Okay,
go.
so the Passover celebration
Mm-hmm.
is a story of freedom.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the basic idea of Passover is freedom, and the freedom of the slaves, the Hebrew slaves in Egypt. It doesn't matter what term you use,
Mm-hmm.
Hebrews, Israelites, Jews. These are named for the same group of people,
Right.
but different names
Yeah.
that were given to them at different times.
Mm-hmm.
So if I say Jews, I mean Hebrews. I also mean Israelites.
Right.
So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so the Passover Seder,
Mm-hmm.
okay, developed because the second temple was destroyed by the Romans, commemorates the story I just told by using foods as a symbol.
Gotcha.
Okay, so the 10th plague was the plague of killing the firstborn. Okay, and I said earlier, a couple seconds ago, that every plague was against the gods of Egypt. Well, people
Mm-hmm.
forget that that the Egyptians worshipped the Pharaoh as if Pharaoh was God.
Right.
Imagine that, Rachel. Thinking a human was God. Okay, so the 10th plague of killing the firstborn,
Mm-hmm.
and it says that the plague went all the way up to the house of Pharaoh.
Right.
That means that the firstborn of Pharaoh would have been the next god of Egypt.
Right.
And what people also forget is that the firstborn always became the priests.
Oh.
And so by killing the firstborn of every Egyptian home, God not only got rid of the next god,
Mm-hmm.
but also all the priests of the next god.
Okay.
Right. So the killing of the firstborn was the last straw, and
Mm-hmm.
Pharaoh said, "Okay, I've had enough. Get out. Just leave.
Right.
Go." So the Passover Seder commemorates this whole holiday.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this whole historical event.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have unleavened bread,
Yes.
which we've already described.
Yes.
We have a shank bone that represents the Passover lamb.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the Passover lamb a little bit.
Let's.
The Passover lamb was a symbol of a pagan god. Okay, if you take a look at pictures of the Egyptian god Khnum,
Okay.
okay, Khnum, you'll see that this major god of Egypt had the head of a lamb.
Oh.
So the lamb was a symbol of the pagan god.
Hmm.
In late Genesis,
Mm-hmm.
Joseph's brothers come to Egypt to live with Jacob, their father.
Mm-hmm.
And Joseph says, "I'm going to introduce you to my buddy, the Pharaoh. But don't tell Pharaoh you're shepherds.
Oh.
Egyptians don't like shepherds. Why do they
Okay.
like shepherds? Because gods don't have to be shepherded."
Okay.
Okay? In India,
Mm-hmm.
it's a misrepresentation, but we say that the Hindus worship the cow. They don't worship the cow. They respect the cow. But the cow, as a respected animal, some would say worship, wanders freely wherever it wants to go.
Right.
Because you don't shepherd a god, and you don't shepherd the animal that it represents the god.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay,
that makes sense.
So Joseph tells his brothers, "Don't tell Pharaoh you're a shepherd." They don't like shepherds,
Okay.
and they tell him we're shepherds anyway because they're honest. Okay.
Oh, hello.
Then I think it's about the seventh or eighth plague.
Mm-hmm.
Moses comes to Pharaoh and says, Pharaoh, we want to let my people go. And Pharaoh says, look, I know you want to go in order to worship your God. Why don't you
Mm-hmm.
just worship him here? And Moses' answer is, part of our worship is going to be to kill a lamb worshipped by the Egyptians. If they see us killing their lamb, they're going to kill us.
Right.
And so it's not good enough. You have to let us go, and then you have the next plagues. Finally, at the 10th plague, they don't care what the Egyptians think anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, God is all powerful. God is going to free them. God is going to get them out of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so they go ahead, and in front of the Egyptians, not only do they kill their animal image of their god, the lamb, but they take its blood and wipe it on the front of their house.
Right.
We don't believe in your God. Your God is fake. Okay, and so the Passover lamb was a way of thumbing their nose at the Egyptians' idolatry.
Gotcha.
Okay, all right. So we described the haroset. You have the maror, the bitter herbs, which is anything bitter. I mean, in the United States, we usually use horseradish. Okay, some places they use romaine lettuce, which also has a bitter taste.
That's true.
Some places they use other vegetables, other plants.
Okay.
But you have bitter herbs to represent the bitterness of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
You have what am I missing?
An egg.
An egg. Okay, an egg was the chagigah. An egg was the offering, the sacrifice made for a holiday.
Okay.
It also represents spring, rebirth, freedom. It's that kind of thing.
The passage of time because it's circular or something or other.
That too. So, but the main thing is that it was the chagigah. It was one of the offerings made for a holy day.
And then there's a spot for just greens, right?
Yes, parsley.
Right.
In the United States, we use parsley. In some places, they use other different. It's something green. Okay, and some places they'll use like a regular lettuce. Okay, it varies from culture to culture, but it represents spring. We dip it into salt water.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we dip it into salt water? Because the salt water represents the tears cried by the slaves due to the harshness of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. The parsley, the salt water, the egg, the shank bone. Okay.
Old mine.
The haroset. I think I got them all. I can't remember, but those are the main symbols.
I'm looking.
Yeah, good.
I should have grabbed mine, but I did not.
I should have had a Haggadah ready.
Right. Shank bone, egg, bitter vegetable. Nope, that's it. And the haroset, which we talked about already.
Right. So usually there's a picture, but there's not. Okay.
There is. I'll put one above here somewhere.
Good.
But it also says some plates have a room for a 6 Hazeret.
Yes, because, okay, you remember near the end of the first part of the service of the Seder, we make a sandwich out of matzah, bitter herbs, and haroset.
Yes.
Well, some people, instead of using matzah for that sandwich, will use the sixth one, which is kind of like another green thing.
Gotcha.
Lettuce or what have you.
All right.
And I can't remember the name of it right now. So, never do a video like this when you're unprepared. So.
I think that's how we've done everything, but that's okay.
Right.
We figured out as we go along.
I think we covered everything, certainly used in the story.
That way, yeah.
And the Haggadah also takes quotations from the Bible,
right,
to like a narrative of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you have other things in the Haggadah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Haggadah means the telling. Okay, the story, and it's the story of the Exodus from Egypt. So there are various verses. So, for example, 4 times in the Bible it says, you will teach them to your son. You will teach this to your son. You will tell your son about all that happened. And from that, we have the image of 4 sons. right?
Mm-hmm.
So now in the modern sense, 4 children.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is the good son who wants to know what the laws are.
Right.
Okay, how do we really do this right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we celebrate correctly this when God gave us our freedom? Okay, the second one is the wicked son. Why is he wicked? Because he wants to disassociate himself with the
Mm.
Jewish community. And he says, what does this service mean to you? Not
Gotcha.
to him, okay, because he's trying to present himself as, like the atheist, like I don't believe in anything that you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so by separating himself away from the community, okay, he's seen as not nice, not a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the third son is the
The simple one.
the simple one. So in the simplest way,
Yeah.
you explain to him what this is all about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In other words, you have to teach people where they are.
Right.
Okay. You have to speak in a language they understand. You have to
Mm-hmm.
teach people in a way that they themselves can understand it and internalize the information.
Yeah.
And then the fourth son is the one who doesn't even know how to ask a question.
Right.
And for him, you begin the conversation by saying, "Hey, let me tell you about this."
Yeah.
Okay. Effectively, that's what they're doing. So basically, the whole idea is to get people asking questions and to
Mm.
talk about this experience, because we're supposed to see ourselves as if each one of us actually left slavery in Egypt.
Gotcha.
Right. Uh, uh, let's see. There are the 4 questions.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel, have you ever been somewhere where you're leading a conversation and you say, "Are there any questions?" and nobody raises their hand?
Yeah.
But all it takes is the first person to ask a question, then other people will ask questions.
Yes. Yes.
So by having the 4 questions,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and having the youngest person present who's capable to read the questions aloud,
Right.
okay, the idea is to entice other people. Now that the first person's asked a question, everybody else will be more likely to ask a question.
It sounds like it also teaches, since we're having the youngest person capable
Right.
of asking questions, it also sounds like we're teaching them it's okay to ask questions.
Exactly.
Speak up.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. Uh, he was the chief rabbi of the United Kingdom for a long time. And he has a quotation. I just love this quotation about asking questions. This is Rabbi Jonathan Sachs.
Mm-hmm.
In Judaism, to be without questions is not a sign of faith. It is a sign of a lack of depth.
Oh.
And then there's a quotation from Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel.
Mm-hmm.
We are closer to God when we are asking questions than when we think we have the answers.
Yeah.
I love those 2 quotes. So yes, it tells kids, even the youngest, it's okay to ask questions. So,
That's awesome. I like that.
Yeah, yes. So when I was a kid, my dad would ask, "So if you were leaving the house as quickly as you can to get away from slavery, what would you take with you?"
Mm.
You got to be able to carry it. And you got
Right.
to be able to grab it fast.
Mm-hmm.
So, the questions to get the feel of what this was all about.
Right.
Right. So basically you go through the history part.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you have the festival meal.
Yes.
Okay. And it varies from culture to culture. It varies
does.
from house to house. After the meal is over, we recite the Birkat Hamazon, thanking God for the meal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And after that, what do you do when you're happy? You sing.
Right.
So there are a bunch of songs that you sing that talk about the history of Jewish community and, this
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. And then at the end, we say, next year we hope to be free. Next year we hope to be able to do this in Jerusalem.
Right.
Right. 3,000 year capital city of the Jewish community. So
That's excellent.
Yep. So in a nutshell, that's what the Seder is all about.
There we go.
Yes.
It takes a long time to get through, though. It's like we said, it's
meal.
an evening.
It's an evening meal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it takes like 3-4 hours to get through
right
a proper Seder.
Right. If you're doing everything in the Haggadah, there's
Mm-hmm.
also there's also a Haggadah out there called the 30-minute Seder. Okay. Which basically brings it down to bare bones. I mean, when kids are young, you don't want to bore them to tears.
Right.
You want to keep them interested, excited. You want a good meal. You want to do the singing, because all kids like singing. Then you want to go.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're kids. So, and there are, Rachel, the Passover Seder, as I said, is all about freedom.
Right.
And the Passover Seder, every generation adds things, takes away things.
Yes.
Okay. It's very evolving. It's very flexible that way.
Especially when you ran the Seders.
Well, yes.
Especially when you ran the Seders. I have to say this. Every year, Rabbi Federow always had a theme going on with his Seders.
Right. Like a Beatles.
Not only did we have a Haggadah, we had a whole separate songbook.
Right. Like
that you would come up with, and probably with, I don't know who all helped you.
Members of the congregation.
Yes.
Okay. But also my daughter, Libby.
Yes.
Would take, like, the Beatles, for example, one year, and take their songs, rewrite the lyrics to be about Passover. Okay, and then we would sing them.
You guys did Broadway musicals once, I think, didn't y'all?
I'm sorry, what?
We did Broadway musicals one time, didn't we?
Oh, yeah. Collected, like the more famous songs from Broadway shows.
Yes.
And rework the lyrics to be about Passover, right? Yes.
That was always fun. We liked those a lot.
Yeah, that was fun.
But you also, again, another way to get, especially the young ones, interested, because again, they did take a long time, and to keep everyone kind of focused and not thinking about how hungry everybody is. The other thing you used to mention to us was how, like, the plagues didn't hurt the Jewish people.
Oh, yes. So,
and I have and that's near and dear to my heart, especially because, one, we got free toys out of it. Second of all, my dad helped you with that first plague.
Oh, yes.
That's always fun.
Okay. Every plague had its own, pardon the expression, gimmick that I would use.
Right.
Okay. What was the first plague? The Nile River became blood.
Mm-hmm.
So I would take a glass prepared by your dad. Okay. I would take a glass that was clear, and as I poured water into it, it would turn red.
It did.
Yeah. He had a chemical that he coated a piece of tape, and he taped it down on the bottom of the glass, so I could do this and nothing would come out.
Totally.
As soon as the water hit it, it would turn red.
I forget what it was called. I'm sure somebody who knows chemistry could, like, put it in the comments. But I do remember he told me it was poisonous. Don't actually drink it. I was like,
don't drink the water.
Don't drink that water again.
Right. So let's see. Darkness, I had somebody go over to the lights and turn them off.
Right.
Okay. For hail, I had ping pong balls, and I would throw them out. The first plague was frogs.
The second plague was frogs.
Okay, that's what I said. The second plague was frogs.
Frogs.
And I would buy these little plastic frogs.
Yeah.
And sometimes they were really cheap. Sometimes they were more expensive. Sometimes they would go on the top of, like an eraser on the top of a pencil.
I think some were like the flip ones too. You could, like, press a tab and it backflips or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's see. One of the plagues killed all the cattle, so there was a cattle theme.
Right.
Toys again.
The wild beast one's definitely a lot of animal toys for that.
Right, like, yes, wild beasts like bears and lions. Anything I could find in plastic.
Right.
Okay, and I would throw them out for the kids to scramble and get.
And then the boils, that was pretty clever.
Yeah. Oh, I would get. I still have leftovers for all of this.
I bet you do.
I would get bubble wrap. And the boils, they would crack it, and make the popping, which would drive all the parents crazy. Let's see. Pretty much that. Oh, and for the killing of the death of the firstborn, I had all the kids scream their heads off.
Yep. That was good.
Parents would start doing that. It was really
Oh,
funny.
it was wonderful. And in the dark too. It was great.
And yes,
Oh,
right.
and then there was like lice and stuff. You threw out bugs and things.
Oh
Hated
yeah,
that.
for the lice, I threw out any bug I could find in
Oh, of
plastic.
course.
Yeah, whether they were lice or not.
Right.
Yes, that was fun.
It was great.
Yeah. So the things we parents do to keep kids involved and interested.
Well,
So
especially for that.
do what?
Like I said, but especially for a big sit down
Right,
event.
right.
Not just a meal, but it is a whole event. And it's, especially, I think, nowadays, it's harder and harder to keep not just kids, but anybody's attention on something for
Absolutely.
two,
It,
2, 3, 4 hours.
Rachel, it used to be that the average attention span in the United States was about 12 minutes.
Yeah.
Do you know why? Because at the end of 12 minutes, you're waiting for the commercial.
Right.
Because television had like a movie would start.
Mm-hmm.
They would bring you in by having the first 20 minutes, but then every 12 minutes there was a commercial break.
Yeah.
So we learned that after 12 minutes, something changed.
Yeah.
Now, because of this thing, okay,
Yeah.
we're expecting change like this. And
Too
it's
much,
hard
yeah.
people's
It is
attention
hard.
spans, right? So, but we do what we have to do.
We do what we have to do.
That's
Absolutely.
right. Yep.
I know we said all major holidays center around food and stuff. We talked about the symbols, and I know that food differentiates between where you're celebrating Passover.
Right.
But
the various foods they use for the Passover in Italy wouldn't be the same as the foods they use in South America, which yeah.
But I don't even know what they use in South America or Italy. That would be fun to do one. That would be fun to do one year. Look up various cultures and stuff.
Passover
but I do
around
know,
the world.
Right? I do know Haroset is different.
Yes.
Because we're Ashkenazi. I always get them confused. Yeah, we're Ashkenazi
right.
versus Sephardic.
Right.
So ours is
Ashkenazi is Eastern Europe.
Yes.
Sephardic is Western Europe and Northern Africa.
Right.
And Mizrahi is like the Arab world and Asia. Right.
But for instance, our Haroset, he is chunky.
It's got apple. Okay, it's got sugar. It's got wine. I think it has walnuts or some form of nut.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think in Western European, it's more fruity.
Yes.
It's got like fig or. But the idea is that eventually it's brown. Yeah.
It's kind of like a reddish brown, but yeah, in Sephardic it's more a paste.
Right, and it's from fruit as opposed to apples and nuts and
right, like dates and things like that.
And wine, yes. And always sweet.
Yes, always sweet.
Interesting.
But some other traditional foods that we have, or at least what I always was like, I guess taught was like matzo ball and chicken soup.
Right. Well,
I know you can have it all year. I know you can have it all year round, but like specifically,
we do have it all year round. But that's typically a holiday meal. Why?
Yeah.
And that includes Shabbat, which is also a holiday. Every week it's a holiday. Okay. And why chicken? Because it's a holiday. Most of the other rest of the week, for thousands of years, we didn't eat that much meat.
Right.
You eat meat, it was a big celebration, a big to-do. I mean, think about it. Okay. If you kill a chicken for a meal, you get one meal and you lose all the eggs it would normally have produced. Okay. If you want a hamburger, then you're losing the animal. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're losing not just like the milk it produced or the other calves it would produce. oxen were beasts of burden, bulls were beasts of burden.
Right.
It's a big cost to the family when they gave up an animal.
Gotcha.
So, and all of these animals still had to be fed and maintained.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you lose everything that you maintained them with. So it was a festival meal that they did the meat, and so chicken soup would be more like a festival thing.
Gotcha.
Up until the modern world,
Right.
where chickens are, you just go to the grocery store, you got all
All
the
over,
chickens
right?
you want, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yep. Thank God.
I think we forgot to mention another set of 4 in the Seder, the 4 cups of wine. I
Oh, right.
feel like I never remember the 4th one.
What do you mean the first 3?
Like, I know the first 2 or 3 are in the first part, but I always feel like I don't remember what happened to the 4th cup.
The 4th cup is just at the very end of the Passover Seder.
Mm-hmm.
You drink the 4th cup. Okay. In the Bible, it says there's a paragraph where God is promising the Jewish people all the things that God is going to do for the Jewish people. Going to bring them out of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Going to bring them into I will redeem you.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the paragraph. Give me a second. I may be able to find it real quick. Let's see. I can't find it real quick. Thought I knew where it was, but I don't. Again, should have had this at my fingertips. But there's a paragraph where God says there are 5 things that God is going to do for us.
Okay.
5 things.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first 4, I will redeem you. I will save you. I will bring you to the promised land.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But it also says, the last one, I will bring you to the promised land, is hadn't happened when the Seder was invented. So what happens with the 5th cup? What happens when we all go back to Israel? The 3rd temple is rebuilt. Okay, the Messiah. That's one of the things that is on the list that the real Messiah will do when the real Messiah comes. Okay, hasn't happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
So who comes with the Messiah? Elijah the prophet. So who's the 5th cup for? Mm-hmm. Elijah the prophet. That's why we call it Elijah's cup, that you're dead.
Right.
Yeah.
Also did that too, yeah.
Yeah, also did that too. So, yeah. Right. So, but the 4 cups of wine come from that paragraph.
Okay.
Each one, remember something. In Judaism, wine only represents the sweetness and joy of life. Mm-hmm. And it's represented by the sweetness of the wine. Mm-hmm. So when there's something to thank God for, okay, I will redeem you. I will, whatever. Okay. So for each one of those things that God says God will do for us, we have a cup of wine.
Right.
We recite the blessing, thanking God for the fruit of the vine, and we drink.
Okay.
And, we ceremonially, ritually refill our cup, but most of the time, most people aren't drinking a full cup of wine.
Right.
That I know of. But it's around food, so it's really not good. And it's wine, it's not bourbon. So, it's
correct,
not a whole
correct.
Yeah.
And then some people don't drink wine to begin with, so it's juice.
Also true. Yep. Grape juice.
Right. Yep. Exactly. But there's also some songs that we sing, like Manish Tana and Dayenu.
That's what Manish Tana. Why is this night? How is this night different? Is part of the 4 questions that the youngest asked to start stimulating questions and discussion about everything.
Right.
Chad Gadya is at the end of the meal. Okay. It's part of this collection of songs we sing at the end. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like a symbolic history of the Jewish people. sort of.
Is it?
Yeah, actually, but in very symbolic language.
Okay.
And let's see. Who knows one? I know one. One is the God of heaven and earth. Who
Yeah.
knows two? I know two. Two are the tablets. Who knows three? I know three. Three are the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Who knows four? I know four. Four are the matriarchs, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. And it goes on to 13.
Yes.
So, let's see.
Dayenu.
Dayenu. Okay. Every step that God had to do for the Jews to get them out of slavery, if God had only given us food, it would have been enough. Dayenu. If God had given us food but not taken us out of the land, it would have been enough. If God would have taken us out of the land but not brought us into the promised land, it would have been enough. If God would have promised, and it builds, right. And Dayenu means it would have been enough. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Yeah. So let's see. Those are the main songs. Those
I think that's it. Yeah.
Right.
Because, like I said,
there
are others.
Right.
I don't think we do all of them.
Some of them are taken from Psalms. Okay. Some of the singing is actually part of the blessings, Birkat Hamazon, the thanking God after the meal. But so after the meal, there's a lot of singing.
Yeah.
We express our joy by singing. So.
Right. Yep. And we say thank you for the meal twice.
Well, in the beginning, we recite the blessing over bread that represents the entirety of the meal. In this case, it's unleavened bread. It's the matzah. Okay. And at the end of the meal, once we've eaten, we also have a more lengthy thank you. Now, you ask the question, why? Why are there two times we thank God for the meal? Well, if I hand you a present all wrapped up, as I hand it to you, you're going to say,
thank you.
Okay, then you're going to take it home, you're going to unwrap it,
right?
And when you see it's something you really, really like, you're going to call me up again and say,
like, really, thank you.
Right, but that's the point. Now that you know what you've gotten, it's a more sincere from the heart thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, same thing with our food. We thank God initially, but when we're done with the meal, we thank God again because we've just eaten, we're satisfied. It's a more sincere thank you.
Yes.
Right. So.
What's another thing? Yep. Oh, and one of the other things that we do at the Seder is, I think it's during the second cup of wine or right before the second cup of wine where we take out.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I began by talking about the 10 plagues and with throwing and all that stuff, and then I forgot the other thing. Okay. In Judaism, we're not supposed to be joyful at other people's expense. Okay, we don't take joy or happiness when other people suffer. And so wine, as I said, is the symbol of joy in Judaism. So we symbolically decrease our joy by taking a drop out of the cup of wine, okay, before we drink it. So for every plague, you dip your finger in the wine and put a dot, basically. You put a drop of wine on your plate that each one time for each plague. Okay. And the idea is that we decrease our joy because the Egyptians had to suffer as a result of our being let go. Right. So, yeah, I'm glad you said that.
No, of course.
I was trying to lead up to it, and then I got distracted.
Hey, it happens. Yes. Organic, like we said.
Especially to old men. Right.
And then, of course, you don't lick your finger clean. You have to wipe it clean. We don't want that.
Because that denies the whole idea. You're decreasing your joy, and then you're right. Right. Yep. I think we covered. I can't remember anything else.
I think that's everything. Yeah.
Right.
We did pretty good. Right. Yay.
One more thing that I would like to say. There's a lot of talk out there about stealing other people's cultures. Okay.
Right.
Cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
Okay. And everybody will say, like, change the name of baseball teams because we're appropriating the culture of Native Americans.
Okay.
Okay. But all of a sudden, it becomes okay to appropriate Jewish culture. All of a sudden, it becomes okay because, well, they're just Jews. Okay.
Mm.
Or the idea that Jesus' Last Supper was a Passover Seder, so it enables them, Christians, to do our Jewish Passover Seder.
Oh.
And, look it up.
Mm-hmm.
Find it on YouTube. There are ministers and priests who will talk about how wrong this is because it's a Jewish holiday celebrating a Jewish event of the Jewish people
Mm-hmm.
that was invented by the Jews
Mm-hmm.
long after Jesus was dead. Okay,
Right.
so he couldn't have been doing what we do, and he certainly wouldn't be doing what we do now,
Mm-hmm.
2024 years ago or whatever. Okay, and it's just, you know, we are powerless to stop people from doing whatever they want. Okay, we're a minority. We're
Mm-hmm.
a very tiny minority. We're 2% of the nation, and in some areas of the nation, we're less than 1% of the
Mm-hmm.
community. Uh, so keep that in mind when it's great to come to a Jewish home and help the Jews celebrate their own holiday.
Mm-hmm.
But for churches to put on Jewish Passover Seders, believing that
Oh.
that's what Jesus did,
Mm-hmm.
it's really obnoxious. It's really
Oh, okay.
resented by the Jewish community. Not that we can stop them. Free world,
Right.
free country, but think about what you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
What's a way that people can, I guess, adjust for that? Or what can people of the communities do for churches that want to do that? Or what's a way they can
Not
do?
do it.
Well,
No,
besides
there's
those.
no, Rachel, what happens is
Mm-hmm.
that eventually they start corrupting the Jewish service
Mm.
to be all about their Jesus.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. And represent a religion and uh, faith that contradicts the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in the modern world, in the beginning, it was 1.5 pieces of matzah,
Mm-hmm.
but over hundreds of years, it became 3 pieces. 3 pieces of matzah. Father, Son, Holy
Mm.
Spirit. Which one is taken out and cut in half to make the dessert at the end of the meal? The middle one, which is the Son. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Father,
Oh.
Son, so it's the Son. So it is crucified, it is
Oh.
hidden, then it's brought back out, resurrected. So they're taking our Jewish holiday that God gave to the Jewish people
Mm.
about the Jewish people and its
Okay.
history, invented by the Jewish people that uses the Jewish language of Hebrew, and now all of a sudden they're perverting it with Christian theology, a
Oh,
theology that
okay. Well, that's
contradicts with the Bible.
no, that's different. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really, you want to join the Jewish people? Love to have you.
Right.
Make sure,
Yeah, find a synagogue,
find a
go to their
synagogue,
Seder.
see if it's okay, sign up and go,
Right.
whatever, that's fine. Or friends who are Jewish. Okay, but to do a Passover Seder in a church,
Okay.
that's
I see what you're saying. I
really
see.
not liked by the Jewish people, even though if we're powerless because we're a minority to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
It really is uh, cultural appropriation.
Okay.
Yeah. So, all right.
Well, thank you so much for coming back on and
Well,
giving
you're
us
very
a
welcome.
little Passover history. Like I said, all the links will be in the description box below. What else? I always forget to do my outro because I'm bad at that. Please like and follow and subscribe. Leave a 5-star review. It can be a bad review. Just leave a 5-star review. I don't care. And all of you guys, just stay good looking and keep on cooking. Bye.